A major shift is unfolding across Europe right now, and it's happening faster than most people realize. Germany has announced a €377 billion military procurement plan. Poland is building what will become the largest army in the European Union by 2035. The UK is targeting 3.5% of its GDP for defense. And just this week, the Pentagon asked NATO allies to take over the majority of NATO's conventional defense capabilities by 2027. This is state log, and today we're examining the most significant military transformation in Europe in decades. Let's start with Germany's historic policy shift. Germany has unveiled a comprehensive procurement blueprint worth €377 billion, including around 320 new weapons projects. German officials have stated their goal is to build the strongest conventional army in Europe. This represents a fundamental change. For decades after World War II, Germany maintained a very cautious approach to military expansion. That approach is now evolving rapidly. In March 2025, Germany amended its constitution to exclude defense spending above 1% of GDP from its debt limits. This allows Germany to borrow an additional €500 billion over the next decade for military purposes. Defense Minister Boris Pistorius has committed to raising defense spending to 3.5% of GDP by 2029. The spending is going towards major contracts for companies like Rheinmetall, which stands to gain over €88 billion. Diehl Defense is receiving significant funding for its Iris-T air defense system, which has been operationally tested in Ukraine. Germany is also investing more than €14 billion in satellite capabilities, including nearly $10 billion for a new low-Earth orbit constellation. German officials describe this as both a security necessity and an industrial strategy, with contracts prioritizing domestic defense manufacturers. Now let's look at Poland, which is pursuing an even more ambitious timeline. Poland spent 4% of its GDP on defense in 2024 and plans to hit 4.7% in 2025, making it NATO's leader in defense spending as a percentage of GDP. The NATO target is 2%. So Poland is significantly exceeding that benchmark. In 2024, Poland's military spending grew by 31% to $38 billion. The Polish armed forces numbered 205,000 troops at the end of last year, with plans to reach 300,000 by 2035. This would make it the largest army in the European Union. Poland's approach differs from Germany's in its procurement strategy. Poland is purchasing equipment from multiple international suppliers: Abrams tanks from the United States, K2 tanks from South Korea, and HIMARS rocket systems. The emphasis is on acquiring capabilities as quickly as possible, rather than exclusively building up its own domestic industry. Polish officials cite their geographic position and historical experiences as key factors driving this massive defense push. The United Kingdom is also pursuing its own defense transformation. At the recent Defense Enterprise Initiative conference, British officials outlined plans for the UK to become a major defense industrial power by 2035. The government has committed to spending 2.6% of GDP on defense by 2027, and at the NATO summit in June 2025. The UK further committed to reaching 3.5% of GDP by 2035. This involves an additional £75 billion in funding over the next 6 years. British officials have described this as using defense investment as an economic growth strategy, creating jobs and developing advanced technologies. This represents a significant increase from current levels and will require substantial budget reallocation to achieve. This week brought a huge development in transatlantic defense relations. The United States has officially requested that Europe take over the majority of NATO's conventional defense capabilities by 2027. Pentagon officials communicated this timeline to allied diplomats in Washington. U.S. officials indicated that if Europe doesn't make sufficient progress by 2027, the United States may adjust its participation in some NATO defense coordination mechanisms. This request covers a wide range of capabilities, including intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, missile defense systems, cyber capabilities, and strategic airlift. Several European officials have expressed concern that the 2027 timeline is extremely challenging. The European Union had previously set a target of 2034 enhanced defense readiness, making this earlier deadline particularly ambitious. The challenges are numerous. Building new defense systems requires manufacturing infrastructure that takes years to develop. Some U.S. capabilities, particularly in intelligence and surveillance, have been developed over decades and would be very difficult to replicate quickly. And Europe faces shortages in air defense systems, drone capabilities, munitions, stockpiles, and production capacity, an issue highlighted by the war in Ukraine. So, what's driving all of this? Several factors are at play. First, U.S. strategic priorities are shifting. The United States is increasingly focused on the Indo-Pacific region. American policymakers have made it clear that Europe, as a wealthy and stable region, should take greater responsibility for its own defense. Second, the security environment has changed. The war in Ukraine prompted European leaders to reassess their security assumptions, demonstrating that conventional warfare remains a real possibility in Europe. And third, there are major economic implications. Defense spending at this scale requires huge budget reallocations. European governments are adjusting their fiscal priorities, which will affect spending on other programs and could impact tax policies. According to SIPRI data, military spending in Europe, including Russia, rose by 17% to $693 billion in 2024, surpassing levels recorded at the end of the Cold War. Looking ahead, Europe is undergoing a massive defense policy transformation. Countries are rebuilding defense industries, significantly increasing budgets, and developing new capabilities. The key questions are, can Europe actually meet the 2027 timeline? Most analysts consider this extremely challenging. How will budget priorities shift? Governments will need to balance defense spending with other critical areas like healthcare, education, and infrastructure. And what does this mean for the future of NATO? The alliance is evolving, with a potential redistribution of responsibilities between the US and its European members. Finally, how will citizens respond to these policy shifts that will affect government budgets and public debate? Europe is entering a new phase in defense policy, characterized by increased military spending, industrial development, and strategic repositioning. The United States is asking European allies to take on greater responsibility for conventional defense. Whether Europe can meet the ambitious 2027 timeline remains uncertain, but the effort will shape European politics, economics, and international relations for years to come. These are complex policy questions with significant implications, and there are many different perspectives on the appropriate level of defense spending and the best approaches to international security. I'm really interested in your perspective, especially if you're in Europe. What are you seeing in your country? How are these policies being discussed? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you found this analysis helpful, consider supporting Statlog. Your support enables me to continue this independent analysis. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.